Now wrapping up crypto's first quarter performance, Seamus Rocca, CEO of Xapo Private Bank, joins me to discuss this. Now, I'd like to get your analysis on the situation. How would you characterize the first quarter for the crypto assets?
I think Q1 was really interesting in that if you think about Bitcoin, you think about the crypto space, it's still evolving. It's come a long way over the last 5 years in terms of the players in the space, in terms of adoptions in various markets around the world. 5 years ago it was quite niche, difficult to buy. Now it's quite prevalent in many countries around the world. But of course, at the end of last year, concerns around FTX and where you place your crypto made people lose a little bit of trust in some of the players in the space. So therefore, people went back to cash. Now, all of a sudden in Q1, you see big banks in the US and in Europe, and with the case of Credit Suisse, collapsing. So now all of a sudden, people have got distrust in big banks. And for me, what's most interesting about the crypto space is that it was Bitcoin in particular that we saw a big uptick in price. It doubled in price pretty much over the last few months. And I think that the fact that Bitcoin is sovereign, it can't be controlled by any government. The fact that it no more can be printed than 21 million, it's finite. From that perspective, it means that as a store of value, the use case is somewhat being validated. So I think that price increase is people that had gone to cash, but maybe still had money in exchanges or had access to being able to buy Bitcoin, no longer trusted banks, and decided to put that cash into Bitcoin. At the end of the day, when we talk about decentralized finance, when we talk about those aspects of crypto, Bitcoin is the ultimate form of decentralized finance. You don't need to trust the actual counterparty. You can hold your own keys if you need to. So I think it's an interesting sort of use case for Bitcoin that we're seeing, where you can't quite trust banks, can't quite trust exchanges, but I trust Bitcoin.
And I want to get into, hone in a little bit more on Bitcoin. It's had its best quarter since the first quarter of 2021. But before we get to that, you used the keyword trust. Now, with the Q4 of last year being marked very much by the collapse of FTX, and the first quarter here being marked by, let's say, fears around the banking sector in general with what we saw with SVB Bank, how has the crypto market reacted to all of this?
Well, I think, there's the big challenge for the crypto space is really the fact that the banks that fell over in the US were well-known banks that were crypto-friendly. So if you think about Silvergate, Signature, Silicon Valley Bank, they were some of the only banks in the world that would sort of support the crypto industry, particularly in US dollars. There are other banks around the world in different currencies. But for dollars, they were very key. They were almost like foundational to the industry. So without those banks, it is difficult for the crypto space to navigate around US dollars. So you're even seeing the likes of Coinbase, which is, of course, very US centric, thinking about, well, maybe we might need to move domicile to, another jurisdiction. I think that would have been unheard of 6 months ago. So I think it's an interesting sort of phase that we're seeing in terms of crypto, where do we go from here? The US is clearly being very anti-crypto at the moment. What does that mean for jurisdictions that want to be crypto-friendly? What does that mean for banking rails for the crypto space? So that's sort of more for the crypto players in the markets. For more sort of people in general, it's this idea of, well, if I can't trust banks and I can't trust exchanges, who can I trust? And I think to some degree, that's why we've created Xapo Bank, where sort of we see ourselves as somewhere in the middle, something where we're a custodian of your Bitcoin, but we're also a bank that can accept stable coins, for example, and still pay you interest. So I think that there's an interesting niche space there that's being created that we're trying to capitalize.
And when we're looking into where to put our money, the other asset class that comes up a lot when speaking about crypto is gold. So how are you navigating that equation?
Well, there's different aspects to that question. I think, some people see Bitcoin as the new form of digital gold. If you think about a store of value or a store of wealth, gold has always been seen as the ultimate store of wealth. But imagine that you were in Ukraine and had to flee, it's very difficult to grab a gold bar and put it on a backpack and emigrate. These days you don't need to anymore. Bitcoin is almost like a much more secure and safe way of storing value. But of course, the price of Bitcoin is very volatile. So, that use case of store of value really holds true if you think about the long-term value of Bitcoin. If you think about it in the very short term, the price volatility doesn't work for you. But if you think about it in 2, 3, 5-year terms, it does. And then, of course, in other areas of crypto, you're thinking about, NFTs a while ago, where de rigueur, everybody was thinking about, investing into NFTs. But at the end of the day, the use case, at least in my opinion, for art is interesting. But I personally wouldn't invest into an NFT. I don't really see the value of holding a bit of a drawing that I don't have physical access to of some art. But I do see value in having a fraction of digital gold that I can hold as an asset class that I know is sitting in a bunker or in some sort of storage place where I can place reliance and trust that this digital token actually represents a physical gold without having to move it around. It makes it much more useful in the modern day and age where you can carry those keys in your phone and have that gold sort of come with you if you needed to emigrate and move around the world. In the example of Ukraine I was giving before. So I think it's interesting that tokenization is being used to develop this idea of asset classes being digitized, like gold, which is about as physical as you get. And there's also the fact that, well, Bitcoin is a store of value and it is the future form of digital gold.
I hear. Now, stacking all the crypto assets one against the other, Bitcoin has had one of its best performing quarters in a while. What do you see as the outlook? Bitcoin still in for the win?
Look, in my view, if you think about it long term, I can't see any competition for Bitcoin right now. If you think about the fact that it's decentralized, if you think about the fact that it's finite, if you think about the hash rate of the database, which is by far the most powerful and therefore the most secure form of crypto that we have, nobody comes even close. No other crypto token or coin comes even close. So in terms of the use case and the adoption and all those aspects as to why it will keep being the most form of crypto, I think Bitcoin doesn't have any competition, at least not at the moment. So in the longer term, I think the sort of the argument for a small allocation of some of your savings into Bitcoin still holds true. I think the problem with crypto comes when people just speculate on price. So if you have a very short-term view on crypto, you just want to make quick money and do day trading, then, for me, that's akin to gambling. Nobody knows what the value of a lot of these cryptos are going to be day to day because of the lack of fundamentals. So from that perspective, the outlook for crypto is more volatility. If you think about it in terms of long term, you got to think more use cases, more adoption. The fact that Bitcoin is finite would mean that there's less of it, and therefore the price will go up. So from a long-term perspective, I can't see any other outcome than the value of Bitcoin going up. But you have to have a long-term view. If your idea of a long-term view is next month, then I think what we're going to see is just more price volatility.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll check back in a couple of months then. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was Seamus Rocca, CEO of Xapo Private Bank.